white looks nice together, doesn't it? So today's Tuesday. I'm gonna wrap up the day now. We got Paul's car back, alignment corrected, pulls nice and straight. Then we had all these beeps after we deleted the laser jammers that were in the front. This is not Paul's car, but pretend that he had these jammers here, and then some sort of control module, whatever, in the middle. So we peeled all of that out, had to take the bumper off to replace the grill, followed the wires in this aftermarket tube up through here, and then my dad had just cut them right at the cabin box. Then we noticed driving the car about every 10 seconds, beep, 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 beep. So freaking annoying. It just kept beeping. So we tried to turn on and off the aftermarket radio. I don't know if it was Dynavin or whatever it was. That was not the source of the beeps. So we came back out here, removed the cabin lower cabin airbox filter, followed the wires in. They used the same grommet that the hood Bowden cable goes through, followed them in, took down the pedal box ceiling. Whoever installed this system broke the corner off the pedal box ceiling and then glued it, which immediately crumbled as I removed it. And in there we found this. Now that is some professional wiring. Holy cow. I removed 1.7 tons worth of wiring and bullshit from that car today. It's going to get much better gas mileage. It should be significantly faster. Found the speaker in there, cut it out, threw everything away. Talked to the customer. He said replace the thing, so I did that. A new pedal box ceiling, whatever the hell, trim cover, trim panel on. Buttoned it up, test drove, done. He picked it up, it's paid for. Now let's take a brief minute and talk about the old parts for my car, which, yes, is back. I didn't realize I didn't film any of that over the weekend. Larissa and I took an Uber up to LA on Saturday, picked up the car, drove it home. There were two complaints. Number one, the headlights were pointed up in the trees the whole way. I got home, put it on the lift, the headlight level sensor on the rear, instead of being cocked, you know, if it goes this way, it was inverted 180 degrees, so I just pushed it over, and that fixed that problem. The other problem is even after his Firestone alignment, it is still pulling pretty noticeably right. So I'm going to have to align it again, which it's Tuesday night. I still haven't done, so I'm still not driving it. Maybe tomorrow. Anyways, old parts. Integral Link, original, 226,000 miles, 22 years. Surface corrosion is pretty bad. And then you can see the rubber bushing or whatever that, I don't think that really has to flex very much. But it's chewed up. This one's dicked, but not as badly as this one. Look at that. How does that happen? Maybe some of this happened during removal, but this thing is just an artifact, and I wanted to replace it purely, if nothing else, for cosmetics. Look at it. That's a Titanic artifact. And they're only $15 a piece for the limb porters. Why the hell didn't I do that one when it was a part before? Here's the whole culprit, the rear bearing. So as the bearing spins, this black part is the reluctor ring that rotates, and with a gouge taken out of it from the drill bit, that was freaking out the wheel speed sensor and activating the ABS. Here's what the rest of the bearing looks like with the hub flange pressed out. You can't reuse these. This bearing is not very old. It's dirty, a little bit of surface rust, but this was a perfectly good bearing for another minimum of 100,000 miles until I drilled a hole in it. Moving on to the rear wheels or rear carriers. This is where the speed sensor goes. The speed sensor goes in that big bore. The bore on the left is the threaded hole where the screw that holds the speed sensor in goes. That's what we had to drill out. You can see the helicoil in there, and it's actually in way too far, probably because when he took the bolt out or screwed it in, I don't know. I wasn't there. But you can see we just drilled through way further than we needed to. The screw doesn't even screw in that far. But this carrier is done, even though the ball joint's fine. Like this ball joint, if I can hold the rest of it here, still has life in it. There's no play there. That feels nice and tight. That's how it's supposed to move. So that carrier is just gone. And like, look at the threads in there for the integral link. Those look kind of washed to me. Aluminum threads aren't a great idea though. So that's done. This one, I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this yet. This is also an original wheel speed sensor. The sensor itself works fine, but good luck ever getting it out of there. It's probably going to lead to the same problem that I had on the other one. This is from the right, the other one's obviously the left. So what happened on the other one, I pounded a socket into it, tried to give it some shock. I didn't want to pull the heat out yet because there's plastic right underneath that of the speed sensor. My whole reason for replacing this was that the aluminum had corroded and pushed this entire speed sensor about 1/4 of an inch out. So it was 1/4 of an inch away from right there where it mates up. And how it was still working, I don't know. The speed sensor can be seen right there. It is that plastic part of the sensor that reads on the side. So it's not reading on the tip, it's reading here where my fingerprint is. So with that pulled out so far, it's a miracle it was still working on my rear left. But then I took heat to it and channel locks, vice grips, pound of Torx into it, you know, everything you can do to get out a stuck screw. And it was just welded in there. Steel and aluminum weld together after enough time. It is amazing how that works. In fact, I think I'm just going to throw this away, remembering how much of a pain in the ass that was to get out. This does not have that much value, which is unfortunate because the ball joints were fine and the bearings were fine, but they're not anymore. So thanks for your service. That leads us to H-arms. I already threw away the one. When the guy who pressed out the original bushings and then put in these PowerFlex bushings did that, he really messed up these races on the H-arms. They were out of round, all gouged up and chewed up inside. Not good. So even though these PowerFlex bushings aren't terrible, they're way worse than I thought they would be, but they're not terrible. We had to replace these H-arms with a good used set that he had. So that's pretty screwed up. This swing arm itself is probably usable, assuming we can get those PowerFlex bushings out, which shouldn't be too bad because it's a two-piece thing and they pry out left and right. So those are most of the old parts. Other than that, I've got the axles. I don't think the axles were the cause of my kind of clicks and clunks when starting in first gear and then initially in reverse. I actually think it was probably these being out of round, and as the suspension changes direction, I was just getting some noise as the PowerFlex bushing was binding in there. Nonetheless, those were the ones I have now are the last 2 axles in North America. I'm glad to have them. They should have a long, happy life. These were donors from Adam, and they came off a car with 99K. So now they've got like 120 something on them. So they have some value. I can return them for a core charge of $100 a piece, but I think they're worth more than $100 a piece. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I'll have to do some research. I don't know what the axles are worth right now, but I got both of them in here. Nice clean boots, no tears, no rust. They're pretty nice axles, actually. So look underneath the F10 528, not a car we're used to seeing in here, and I have a few observations. So very similar suspension geometry to the E39 still, even though no, but it's got these big swing arms, kind of like the ones that we just looked at from my M5. The rear control arms now hinge way the hell in here towards the center and have ball joints that go upside down at the wheel carrier. For some reason, there are wires run in there. I guess that's the wiring for the electronic parking brake. Weird. Are those plastic? Is that actually plastic? No, I think it's metal. I would hate to see plastic sway links. Boots look pretty tired for only 85,000 miles. Regular strut assembly. No dust cap on the bleeder screw. That's curious. 85,000 miles on a 2014. Let's take a look at the rear sway bar or rear diff mount. I can't see the screen, but I'm guessing you see the big crack up at the top. That's not great. I think that could have been designed much better. And also notice the sway bar. It is smaller than my index finger. What the hell is that? You got a really big center exhaust brace that spans kind of the whole width of the car. Big exhaust pipe, 3.5 inch? So that's come a long way. The flex disc does not look anything like a flex disc that I've ever seen before. Super weird. It's already missing underbody screws from some prior sloppy mechanic. And a screw here. And these are these real light, like flimsy. I could stick my finger through that if I pushed harder. Standard tie rod. The strut comes down and then forks over this control arm and attaches to that. Got another big ass wishbone up there. I don't know, very, very, very different geometry for a much smoother, more luxurious ride. I know front suspension techs come a long way. Overall, pretty nice until we got the valve cover off and found this.
Got the valve cover off. It's not supposed to be like that. Dickered.
So now I'm going to get yelled at because I'm going to trash talk modern BMW a little bit. I do realize it's a 4-cylinder 528, but here's my thing. This car was what, $65,000, $58,000 in 2014. It is a 5 Series, and it is not a base 5 Series. It has a nice interior. It has a few options on it. Why does it have a timing chain that narrow, that lightweight, that flimsy? At 85,000 miles, why do we need to rebuild the cam timing system of the engine? That's really, really, really alarming to me that BMW is currently incapable of producing a car that can even go 100,000 miles without a major engine teardown service. That's a big problem. So any of these other cars in here, people say, oh, they need rod bearings. Yeah, they do. At 200,000 miles, you need to replace the rod bearings. Timing chain guides, kind of the same deal, around 150 to 200 to 250. And the chains don't really stretch that much. But in 85,000 miles, the chain stretched that much. So she was close to selling the car anyways. It looks like this is the final push. The warranty/recall for this expired a number of weeks ago. So she's going to try to get the BMW dealer to honor it anyways, who serviced this car for years. But I don't know. I certainly wouldn't touch one of these made in the last 10 years.